morning, Alfonso Cuarón.
Bonjour.
You are a very passionate cinephile. You are a real film lover from your childhood, when you were a kid, till now. Did you ask yourself why you love cinema so much?
Never. It just happened. It's one of those things that, with love, you don't question yourself the whys. You know, you just keep on diving into it.
For instance, I know I loved cinema when I was a kid because I was bored, because I was not satisfied with my life or with reality or with society. I think it's one of the reasons sometimes.
Well, yeah, it has to do that it's for lunars. You know, it's like a thing that gave me comfort since I was a child, and first as a child watching. I mean, mostly it was about Hollywood films because I was a child in Mexico City. And I mean, some European films, but it would be like La Grande Vadrouille and La Grande Vadrouille,
La Grande Vadrouille.
La Grande Vadrouille,
and
that
we
I
saw
adore.
A clip of La Grande Vadrouille in Roma.
That's the reason that it's there. You know, there were some, but it was always a kind of genre that I would be exposed to, you know, something like, call it children friendly.
But when did you realize that cinema was not only entertainment, but could also be a form of art, an art form?
It was one evening that, one night in a weekend, my cousin had stayed for a sleepover at my house. My parents had gone for a party or a dinner, and we were supposed to go to bed at 10:30 or something like that. Maybe I was 8. And we sneaked out to watch television. And we knew that there were shows late at night that they were for adults only, you know? So, of course, as a child, I'd fantasize a lot about what it was in those shows. And so they were going to show a movie. And I said, okay, let's watch. And it was, for some reason that I don't understand, it was with the disclaimer that it was only for adults. And I was so damn excited about it. And, but that film happened to be Bicycle Thief. And I find myself, I mean, I didn't find what I was expecting, you know, that I was going to find in an adult film, but I was completely swept by it. I kept on thinking about it. I was deeply moved by it, more moved than I have ever been in the other films that I had love for entertainment. And I started getting very curious about those films. So I started to chase those films whenever I could. Both in television, when I would be able to sneak, or I learned that there were some cine clubs. And I remember, I mean, a bit later I went and I saw Vis-a-Vis, that I remember that I didn't understand a damn thing. And nevertheless, I could not stop thinking about it and kept on going to try to figure it out. And as a young, probably I was a very, very young transition between teenager to a child to teenager. I cannot say I fully understood it. It was later, but it kind of kept me going. I was very intrigued about the form of it, about its form. I was very, first I remember saying, no, this is a badly made film. And then I started saying, no, it's not badly made. Why is a film journey that it has nothing to do with even the more classical films that I have seen? And I guess that was part of the moments, and I started just to, but after Bicycle Thief, that I started actively exploring other cinema. And I was lucky that my mother indulged my curiosity and love for films since I was very young. and she liked films as well. And she's the one to introduce me to cine clubs, and she introduced me to, I mentioned that I have seen Bicycle Thief.
We mentioned De Sica and Godard, two important names of European cinema from the post-war era till the Nouvelle Vague.
But soon after came Kurosawa.
So
there was, yeah.
But when did you continue? Why did you continue this research of important filmmakers, Asian cinema, of course, and the new European cinema? Because I know you like very much Fassbinder, for instance, and you like very much the Swiss filmmaker Alain Tanner, yes, which is one of the important directors of this modern cinema of the 60s and 70s.
Well, there was a point in which I was. After searching so much for, now I was very intrigued at the same time that I was watching those films, that probably after I discovered Bicycle Thief, not long after, in a little town in Mexico, there was an old cinema, that very popular cinema that they would do double or triple features of reruns, old films and all kind of films. And I saw a film that impressed me a lot. And mostly were Mexican comedies or bad comedy film, action films, or a lot of kung fu films of the period of the 70s.
Everything.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. But one day they show one film that I love. And I remember the name of the director. It was The Rain People. I remember Francis Ford Coppola because he sang with the Ford in Rain People, I think. And I remember, wow, I like Francis Ford because I guess that through my mother and stuff, I started learning about that there's a director behind because, and then I started getting very intrigued about who this Coppola guy was. And through that, I started learning about more of the American cinema in the 70s. Yeah, and I was also kind of said, okay, you know, Hollywood is also something else. And I was immersing myself in, that was very lucky in television in Mexico at the time. They were either at 4 p.m. or later after, I guess, 10 p.m. They would show because it was some channels, they didn't have more programmation, so they will have just old films from the library. And I saw so many of John Ford films, so many of Douglas Sirk, so many of Capra, some old Hollywood. So I started to gather that kind of old Hollywood stuff that I was loving, and slowly I was reconciling myself with the Hollywood cinema, still enjoying a good entertainment. You know, like it was an amazing time in Mexico because it's not unlike it's the Paris that has never changed in that sense. That is, it was filled not only of commercial cinemas, but filled with cine clubs, and also most of the, you know, like the French embassy had the institute that they show French cinema. The Goethe Institute of Germany, they had show German cinema. That is where I saw, for instance,
film by Fassbinder.
The films for Fassbinder, or the very early Herzog, and the very early Wenders, also the Fieberbergs and all of those. You know, so in my teen years, it was like very fertile for that. But it was in film school where a teacher that I consider one of my, really a teacher, a master for me. It was a film critic, very hated by most of Mexican film directors because he's mean, but rightly so, including with me. His name is Jorge Ayala Blanco. He he gave me a class the first year that it was about film history. And through that, discover other films. And then the following year, he did a class for whoever wanted to go, that it was new tendencies and currents of contemporary cinema. And then he started showing not the Nouvelle Vague that we had seen, but it was the post-Nouvelle Vague. You know, it was more about Alliot and oh my God, what's his name?
In France or
in France, Pierre River, Pierre River,
Moi Pierre Rivière, yes, by René Alliot.
Alliot, but also you know, other filmmakers of that period.
Like Chantal Ackerman, for instance.
Ackerman, for instance, was like one of the big things that we would explore and watch, but also with German, the German of the period. So that definitely opened a whole new universe for me. He's the one who exposed me to Un homme qui dort. For instance, he showed curiously in that not in the Nouvelle Vague, but in that other course. And I guess that he was just gathering.
Post-new wave. Yeah.
And so it was, but all kind of films. There was a very interesting film. I don't know if you remember, called Le Petit Godard. It was a film done in the filmmaker had this theory of doing films that with Super 8 cameras, you could put a little bit like when other directors did later on, that you could put like 30 little cameras around. So you allowed, without the artifice of staging, to do through documentary, to do with cinematic language fiction. And everything is shot in Super 8 to prove the point. And among that, there's an amazing interview that he has with Godard, in which Godard, I don't know if he's just bullshitting in the interview, because he's talking about absolutely something has nothing to do to the questions that this guy is asking. It's very funny. It's really interesting.
I didn't know that. But I'm not very surprised by the eclecticism of your cinephilia, because I think it feeds in a way your work as a director. The fact that there's no hierarchy between the new wave films, the art house film, even experimental film, and the sort of entertainment or Hollywood film. Because when you see a film like Children of Men or Gravity, Children of Men, you think at the same time, you think of Soylent Green, for instance, and Tarkovsky.
Oh, love Soylent Green. It's an amazing, yeah.
Yes. And you said that Gravity was inspired at the very beginning by A Man Escape by Robert Bresson, but there are also some influences of the Planet of the Apes, for instance.
That oh well, yeah.
In a way.
You know what? Funny enough, it's the same location when she kind of comes out. It's the same location of that they shot Planet of the Apes.
I think I recognize it, actually.
Yeah, it is. We just had to make it more green because the real location is kind of more arid.
Yes.
But yeah, I can see that. I can see that. The truth of the matter is that I never have a hierarchy between Poseidon Adventure or you mentioned Soylent Green, that was another one, or later on Jaws,
yes,
or with films by Tarkovsky or by Ozu. It was like cinema. Some is fun, some are fun, and also there's exploring something very interesting. The good ones always explore something, yeah.
Of course.
And then the other, and also even unwillingly, like the great B cinema of many American directors that now we consider and we talk about thematic qualities. I'm certain that some of those directors didn't know they were doing that. They were not aware consciously.
Some directors were not as self-conscious as some directors are now. But you don't seems to be a very self-conscious director, finally. Not of the way you are making a film, working on a set, but on the way you are dealing with the same themes or some obsession.
I don't think about that. I mean, truth of the matter is that, yes, I recognize that my films are very different from each other. And yeah, there's something that I deeply admire of these amazing filmmakers, masters and amazing filmmakers that are kind of more in a realm of thematic realm and even formal realm. And I mean, from, we said Ozu or Berman or Tarkovsky, and but at the same time, I also, it is what I am, and I'm not going to attack it or defend it. It is, I cannot be in a different way. At some point, because some other friend filmmaker told me that it was not good that I was going from one place to the other. And I was a bit thinking about it, and I came to the conclusion, well, it is what it is. I mean, I'm not going to compare myself by no means, but you think about Kurosawa, he did all kind of films.
But for instance, when you like very much director like Alain Tanner as a film student until now, is it why you feel some acquaintances with him regarding his style or the themes or his vision or his political topics he's treating in these films?
Well, that's the beauty of cinema. I don't think you can separate those things because that is the cinematic language. I always have an issue with people talk about, when they talk about films, they talk about story. No, yes, that's one element, and sometimes very important element of a film. But it's only one element, because sometimes in many filmmakers, the story doesn't tell you much. Nevertheless, everything around, between the sound, the performances, or even the form itself, is conveying many other things, that maybe they are not in the explicit story. So when you watch a film and you are connected with the film, I don't think it's about one space. Yes, of course, sometimes I say, okay, this element really moved me, or I'm very impressed about that element. But if it's only one element that you are impressed, then there's something that is not fully working as a piece of cinema. In the case of Tanner, is the combination. You mentioned that the combination. On one hand, is you want to talk story and thematics, is this tension between the individual and the collective, and the constant, in particular in his first period, his obsession about exploring utopias and believing in a utopia, but also being very realistic and conscious that they're going to fail. And the reason why they fail is because as much as he believes in the communal is made by individuals, and he believes in individuals. But there's a tension between individual and communal. And that tension is what brings utopies down. Besides the external forces of the powers in which the utopia is going against. So all of that is fantastic. But together to that is a very ludic element with Tanner and how he plays with his characters. There's something always very playful. There's always a sense of humor, a certain sense of irony, a tenderness to them. He was very reactive against the Nouvelle Vague. I don't know if you know that he hated the Nouvelle Vague. He had his stint here. He tried to make his to start his career here in Paris, and it's very similar his journey to that one of Rousseau. You know, that another Swiss that from Geneva, the two of them, and the two of them came to Paris. One admiring the energy of the Nouvelle Vague, and the other one admiring Voltaire, and both felt rejected. Voltaire went back saying that it was just a bunch of cosmopolitan snobism, and wrote the Emile as a reaction to Candide, for instance. And you have Godard, Tanner, that came here, and he went back to Switzerland, saying that the Nouvelle Vague were in reality a bunch of right-wing anarchists, and that these right-wing anarchists were just like crybabies, you know, doing that, were not conscious. And he is very clear to talk as the prior 68. You know, the Nouvelle Vague, yes, prior 68. Yes. And then he finds that the whole stunt of Godard and Truffaut in Cannes was absolutely childish and self-serving. He was not impressed by that. And in many ways, that the way he does films is, he was taking, because he admired certain things, you know, taking the energy of the Nouvelle Vague, the tenderness of relationships in Nouvelle Vague that you have with Godard and the Truffaut, the sense of humor that particularly Godard can have with the characters.
The Swiss humor.
The Swiss humor. But he infused it with a political conviction.
Maybe Tanner...
Without propaganda, because he hated the post-Siga Vertov period of Godard, because he found that it was just propaganda.
I think Tanner was closer to British free cinema than Nouvelle Vague, maybe, because he started working in UK in the 60s, and he was quite friendly with this new current of free cinema.
Yes, I mean he started like that because he did with Goreta. They did together a short film called Fine Time. That was that impressed Lindsay Anderson. Yes. They became friends, and through Lindsay Anderson, he met John Berger, and he was planning first to have a career over there, but he was attracted to the Nouvelle Vague, as everybody was. I don't know about free cinema, because free cinema tends to be more fragmented. And something that Tanner believes is the integrity of time.
The style was different, yeah.
The style, but also the approach of character is just because the nature of European versus British kind of mentality. While there was, let's remember that the UK never had a revolution. Okay, so it's a complete class system society. You know, well, as everyone, but that's very explicitly like that. So the response for that, the free cinema, is very much about the establishment, but about the institution. While for Godard is about a whole global ideology. You know, that is for Tanner. That is more about a whole clash of ideology. You know, not necessarily clash of class.
You mentioned the importance of storytelling, the fact that a lot of people are obsessed by storytelling in movies, and particularly maybe American cinema. Of course, you're telling stories, but you tell stories in a very peculiar way, mostly by image, visual language, visual writing. So, do you consider yourself as a stylist, but not style in the sense of just mannerism or making beautiful things, but create a new language or different writing to tell stories, but by the image and by the sound.
Look, I hope I'm not a stylist, that I cannot tell. I try not to be. I know that early on in my career, I was very preoccupied coming from Mexico, in which there were great filmmakers, great cinema and great filmmakers, and I was a big admirer of Ripstein and Casals and Fons of two generations before mine, but something that was a little frustrating is that technically they were very poor, most of them, you know. Because I grew up, my film career has been very linked with Emmanuel Lubezki.
Yes.
And we were obsessed about trying to make things that they felt like world cinema, sure. And whatever concept we had of world cinema, because it could be from Hollywood to Nouvelle Vague to German, but there was something that was organic about that. The technical aspect was organic to the form. Yes. I think that sometimes the technical aspect was fighting against the form of filmmakers just because of the resources or the know-how. I have no idea in Mexico. And so misleadingly, we were obsessed about just first trying to do a shot that we were proud. So, then a scene that we were proud in terms of technically, and there was too much of an obsession, and that's the reason I went to do it to Mamá También, because I felt indigested by that, but stylization and stuff. You know, I think I did a film that, of the films I've done, is the film I like. There's a Little Princess that has a style, but is also about something else. But then I overdid it after that. And I needed to clean my palette and completely. When I told Chivo that I need to do the film that I would have done before going to film school. You know, not understanding anything about technique or anything. And that's the reason we did it to Mamá También.
And actually, what you say about the film by Alain Tanner, about the fight between utopia and the realism, and all the great thing you said about his work, to my opinion, fit perfectly with Y tu mamá también, in a way.
It's inevitable that that I mean, my older son is called Jonas, because of an Alain Tanner film. So it's inevitable that even not consciously, there are forces and influence. Something that I didn't recognize at the time is, for instance, in Y tu mamá también there's a voiceover. And there's a voiceover in Jonás, for instance. The treatment of the voiceover is different, but there is that aspect. There is this aspect of the individual and the context and the social context. Yeah, there is that element, but it was not a conscious decision.
Of course, yes, but it's and you mentioned your collaboration with Emmanuel Lubezki, Chivo, and your relationship with technique or even technology. Because, for instance, Children of Men, you invent a way to shoot this sequence in the car that was never seen before. So I think you invent in a way some way to shoot innovative way. And Gravity, you had to wait years in order to have the technique ready to shoot the film the way you wanted to do it. So, and it's always completely connected with characters, with the story. It's not just a tour de force, just something to make it spectacular. What is your relationship with technology and technique?
I'm very bad technologically, and what I'm saying is that, for instance, wow, I didn't have a computer until probably way after Children of Men. I didn't even know how to use a computer. I used to do old-fashioned, you know, like faxes and stuff like that. But truth of the matter is, every time I do a film, there's a need of how you see the film. And then is when I'm not fearless, but very irresponsible. And I said, okay, we're going to do this. And most of the time they said, well, that's impossible. And in many cases like that, they said, it's not possible. That doesn't exist. You cannot do that. And it's a matter of making it happen. And then when you make it happen, you learn about some technological things, but I never become an expert. I'm just using it for the purpose of what I need to do at the moment. I'm not exploring in between films all the new technological things. Every time I have a film,
it depends on the film, depends on the story.
I pretty much think about, I try to resolve what I want to do for the film, and sometimes the solutions, they need to be very technological. You know, in the case of Gravity, I was very naive. I told Chivo, let's do this film. It's a tiny film that we're going to do in 5 weeks, just an empty black set, and we hang one actor with some wires. That was my thing. He read the script and says, are you sure? I says, yeah, let's do a test. And the test was terrible. So when I realized, okay, we need to figure this out. And then it became like the whole process of that film was inventing how to do it. You know, it's
in terms of technology, I was mostly thinking of the camera, of the image, of the technique of cinema, because you had the formation of DOP, of cinematographer, no? At the beginning.
My dream was, because I admire from very early on, I didn't understand first when I was a child the difference between a cinematographer and a director. I would say, well, it's not the same, you know, and then later on I learned that there was a separation, and I was not feeling very comfortable with that. But I said, there were also, I saw that there were certain directors that they have done both things. And I said, okay, I like that. I want to do that. And I love photography since I was very young. And I studied still photography in school when I was in high school. And I love taking photographs and also exploring the possibilities of the negative. And when I would start going to film school, the natural thing was also for me to become a DP as well, because then I would work in more movies. You know, not only my movie, but other movies that they will call me as a cinematographer. And in many ways, the reputation I was having in film school is that I was a cinematographer. And Chivo entered a couple of years after to the same school. And for 1 year, he was my assistant when I was a cinematographer, until I saw his first Super 8. And I said, this guy, he's the real deal. So I wanted to do my own films. It's now he's going to do my films, because I recognize his genius. But I always been with Chivo, I mess with his photography, he messes with my directing. You know, it's a very organic thing.
It's a couple. And what is your opinion about the 35 or 75 millimeter and digital? Is it connected to the story you want to tell, to the film, to the project? And for instance, in Gravity, the ending was shot in 65 millimeter because the feelings, it gave something else to the audience.
Well, we wanted to give, yeah, exactly. It was finally back on Earth, and we wanted to have an absolutely different quality. It's been a digital journey. We want to have an analog journey. It was just, things that you make up because you think is the right thing. And it's very instinctive as well. It's like, okay, we can do it. And there's also another thing that is like, like to have done in 35 the other stuff, it was absurd because it was going to be complemented with visual effects, all of it. So it was absurd to do it like that. And also the range that the negative can give you for those things is very limited. What you're shooting exterior daytime, there's nothing that beats a beautiful negative because of you can have the information and the quality. But I know that there's a lot of rift about negative versus digital. I hear some directors talking that if it's not negative, it's not cinema. Okay, then David Lynch is not cinema, and then Nuri Ceylan is not cinema, and then half of the masters of the last 20 years are not cinema. I find that in many, there's also the school of, it needs to be vista vision, it needs to be big 65 millimeters and stuff in negative. It tends to be a boys' club, in my opinion. That they like the big camera, like the big cars and the big everything. And it tends to be a boys' club and tends to be highly economically successful filmmakers. I think that you ask an average European director says, whatever camera you give me that I can make my film. Yes. So I don't think that what is relevant is the palette that you want in your film. And when I'm talking about palette is connected with the language that you're using. And for that, yes, I think that there are tools, 35, 16, digital, different formats of digital or different VistaVision stuff. They are just tools. The spirituality of cinema doesn't come from the tool. The spirituality of cinema comes from the filmmaker, not from, of course, from the technique.
And at what point of the project did you decide that the main character of Gravity will be a woman?
Very early on. The first draft, not the first draft, but the first, when we were, Alfonso Cuarón, who wrote my son who wrote the script with me, we were just like fastly talking about it in one evening, and it was the man. It was called the man, ba 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 ba, and the next day we decided to change it for the woman, and but it was pretty much it was from not the very genesis, but initially, and we didn't second guess it. We thought it was better.
It changed everything.
We felt that eventually. At the moment that remember, Jornal said, "Yeah, this is easy. We just put the WO, so the woman." So, but then we realized that it would bring a complete different journey.
And by the way, I thought it's very funny to have a clip of Maroon by John Sturges in Roma.
Well, that's another one, you see?
Yes.
That's one of those. I saw Maroon so many times. It was one of those that I kept on going back. I was obsessed by that. Also, I'm from the generation that I saw the man walking in the moon. So it was all of that stuff. Apollo 13 was very present. And it's interesting because Maroon happened right before Apollo 13 happened in real life. And in many ways, they are very parallel. And another thing I love of Maroon is that the savior at the end is a Soviet astronaut.
But it was not in your mind when you prepare Gravity. It was not.
Oh, I'm sure that it was in my mind. Maroon, yeah, I love Maroon. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, but it was not something that, look, when we talk about it, first we talk about Dead Manscape in the sense that it was a quiet journey that is a constant escape, a constant going forward, but also with certain obstacles. Yeah, but then when we start, that we need to embrace the action, the more action form. And a film that we talk about was Runaway Train, yes. The screenplay of Kurosawa, and it was Konchalovsky. Yeah, fantastic yes. film. In the sense that it's a film that is a constant race, a constant going, that starts becoming metaphorical. That at the end is not like Dead Man Escapes, that is not about a man escaping a prison. No. And Runaway Train is not a man trying to stop a train. It's about, destiny.
I know you never see your film, and we have not a look back to your work, but I did, and of course the films are very different, but the same man did the film. So there is something that's very important in your film. There are a lot of your films are dealing with hope, with courage. People are wounded in a very tragic or terrible situation, but they fight and they think. Not only they think against despair. Of course, it's a great feelings and great emotion to tell a story. But why is it so important for you?
I have no idea.
I know, but I was trying.
No, I have no idea. It's those things that you just sit and write, and those things.
It's in yourself.
I guess so, but I guess the case with anybody who does any creative endeavor. Inevitably, those things are, whatever is personal is going to come into the open.
But something that's also I was very troubled and very surprised in a way, but I have to ask you this question, why is grief so important in your films? And more because when you saw Roma, maybe you understand something about your previous film, because if you see Children of Men or Gravity and Disclaimer later, a lot of stories about parents, man or woman, losing a child. And that's something that's really at the heart of your films. It took a very important place.
Yeah, you were mentioning actually yesterday some of these things, and truth of the matter is that half of the things you tell me, and it makes sense, completely makes sense, but I was not aware of those things. I've been aware of things like, for instance, Chivo and I would like to put in every film, particularly in Gravity we couldn't, or maybe there's some place, but just this CUEC, because that was the name of our film school. So if there's in Children of Men in a wall, there is a big CUEC and stuff like that.
But it's private joke. It's not.
Those I'm aware. In Harry Potter, I put a Harry Potter marketing mug in one of the kitchens of the house.
For instance, you like to end your movies on a beach by the sea with a woman by the sea. It's something that is very obvious.
Again, you're going to make me self-conscious for the next one, and I don't want that. Man.
No, because you did it again in Disclaimer, for instance.
It happens in Disclaimer as well.
It's not my fault. I love Disclaimer, to end with Disclaimer, because I think it's a masterpiece and it's the best 7-hour films I've ever seen. It's.
I need to show you some amazing 7-hour films.
Which one?
Alexander Platz.
Yes, but it's again.
Alexander
Platz. It's not 7. It's 12. It's 12.
It's 12. Okay, Le Petit Quinquin.
Yes, no, but I love when filmmakers, directors are making series. I totally agree with you. Fassbinder, Bergman, Dumont, Assayas. You did the best series, and Disclaimer is absolutely great. And I have to confess I had to stop sometimes because it was too intense. You know?
I don't think that any filmmaker who does series is trying to do a series. It's just trying to do a long format film.
Absolutely. I think the disclaimer among different themes is a film about the power of fiction, because it's a story of a vengeance organized around a book that people consider as a true story, and it is a work of imagination. And it's something very interesting today, because as a storyteller and a filmmaker, how do you consider the change about the perception and the acceptance of people when you are telling them a story?
Well, when you tell a story, you have to depart from the point of start with the point of departure that they will tell you, that they will believe you. You know, that they will be with you in the story. You know, that they will be with you in the journey. I think that it's more even nowadays problematic in the sense of how storytelling completely has taken over reflection. You know, and I'm talking about not necessarily in cinema but socially. You know, in which storytelling can be more comforting than reality, even when we make our political choices. The fact also that we live a society nowadays that is overtly narrativized. There are narratives everywhere. A narrative is becoming more fragmented and small. And it's like we're fragmented, we're addicted to those narratives. And the problem with all those narratives is that in many ways, the same that I think we were talking yesterday about how a narrative can kill time. A narrative also can kill reflection because you're too busy.
And truth.
Reflection and truth, yes, but to get into the bottom truth, you need reflection. These are narratives aimed for an immediate opinion. And opinion is the enemy also of reflection and coming with your own conclusions. You're just following the thread of narratives. And I think that that's very dangerous. In that sense, art could be a counterbalance to all of that because offers other kind of narrative. You know, it's a narrative that in principle needs to be absorbed into a certain reflection. But nevertheless, I think that also the success of all TV series format as TV is that it's a constant addiction to a narrative that is immediately disposable. You know, I can watch and enjoy series, but I have to say that most of them, I said, what did I watch tonight? You know, I watched 6 or 8 episodes of something. What was that? And sometimes I have to think about it and I don't even remember what I saw.
You did the opposite with the disclaimer.
Well, hopefully. And a good film is that film that offers the key to the audience to go into its own reflection, in its own interpretation of things. You have much better, you understand my film. I seriously believe that you understand my films better than I do. And that's the reason I don't have a problem with people attacking my films, so they don't like it, because I get it. I get it by the same token. You know, and there's another thing to think about my films. I have so much admiration for the great masters that whatever I've done, I said, yeah, maybe it's okay. But
more than okay.
Well, that's me. Maybe it's okay, but by no means I still aspire. I would aspire, and maybe it's arrogant, to do something like the great masters. You know, it's incredible when you see those films. It's really incredible. It's beyond any experience that most of us filmmakers can do.
But believe me, most of your films are really great experiences.
Well, I'm very glad, and
really,
thank you.
Really, thank you very much.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.